Hello there, guys. This is Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space. Tonight I'm going to be telling you about my December and January wrap-ups because I didn't get a chance. What a crazy January we've had. I just was not able to post it. And also, I have a couple books I want to talk about for my February TBR, and my Febregency TBR will be on the end. I was going to post it separately, but I think I'm going to run out of time. I wasn't expecting to be hosting 2 readathons in February. So, but that is just how things worked out. So, okay, let's jump in. So, I finished quite a lot in December. First, I finished Eclipse by Stephanie Meyer. So I am rereading the Twilight series with Victoria, one of my booktube besties here, Victoria Musical Bookworm. We are buddy reading a reread of the Twilight series, and we both enjoyed them when we were quite young, and I don't know why I can't seem to find a good picture of it, but here's the cover. It's a really crappy picture of it on Amazon, whatever. It was interesting because this used to be her favorite, and her opinions have changed because of one particular character, and I completely agree with her assessment. There's a particular character in this book who was super obnoxious, and he's not in the earlier books obnoxious. Like, he gets kind of mean in book 2, but you understand it. You understand why that happens. But then in book 3, it's just like, oh, dude, stop. You're being awful. So, but regardless, it was so fun. I enjoyed it so much. So, next I finished Another Place at the Table by Kathy Harrison. Did I already talk about that? I feel like I've talked about this so much, but maybe I didn't actually finish it until December, but regardless, I talked about it in my favorite books of 2023. That's where I talked about it. So this is the memoir of a foster mom who was a foster mom for like 12 years, I think it was. So she raised her own 3 boys, I believe, and then fostered children, and some of the children in her home had really difficult histories, and she talks about some of the ones that she ends up adopting, and then several that she didn't, and how they decided these things. It was like really heart-wrenching to hear how they made those kinds of decisions, because you wish that you could be a forever home for all of these kids, a safe harbor. But some of them are going to mesh with your family and others are not. So there was one girl in particular that she really wanted to adopt. But the girl was not safe to be around any other kids because of the abuse that she had suffered. She started doing what her abuser did to her to other kids in the home. And so she had to be taken out of the home. And so it was really sad. And it really gave me kind of like a clue of the kinds of things you're probably going to be facing with children who've experienced things that nobody should have to experience, much less as children. So I'm really grateful for this book. It was brutally honest. I didn't even know you could be this honest. Like, I thought it was legally impossible to be this honest. So yeah, I learned a lot, and I really appreciated that she shared that. So, and then next, I just wanted to mention that I DNF'd Bitter Medicine by Tsai. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce that. But the cover, I just loved it so much. And that's why I picked it up, was because of the cover. It's a fae romance, which I don't actually read those. I'm not really a person who's a fan of reading about the fae or fae romances. Like, I was never what's the one who does like City of Bones and I don't know. Cassandra Clare. I was never a Cassandra Clare like junkie follower or anything. I enjoyed her books a little bit when I was like 18 or 19. But I just kind of lost interest. And so I'm not really a huge fae person, but this cover just was so pretty, and I learned about it through the library, and I just thought, I should try a new release. And of course, being friends with Jenny, it's hard not to be kind of excited about a new romantasy coming out. But I just couldn't, unfortunately, get past the writing style. The writing was not getting me excited. Like, I only read a couple pages, and I was like, this is not going to be for me. The premise too is great. But yeah, that's what a lot of times will pull me out of books that I'm like, that sounds so fun. But then I start reading it and I'm like, I don't really want to read a story in this prose. So, and then other times, I'm like, hey, I love Twilight. So I guess I'm a little unpredictable in that sense. But this writing, for whatever reason, was not pulling me in. And that is no shade to the author. It just wasn't for me. But, gosh, I wish I could remember what the premise is so that maybe you guys could know if it's for you. But it's, I think it's, let's see. So it's a woman, she's like running some kind of magical medicinal shop or something. And one of her clients is like a really handsome fae. And they get together. And it's like about them getting together. So yeah, it sounded really cute. Next, The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. Ende? I don't know. Ending story. So if you guys are like me, you probably watched this movie when you were younger, and thanks to this, I rewatched the movie and loved it. It was so good. It was so fun. And the first half of this novel is a lot like the movie. Like basically it's pretty much the movie. Like, sorry, dropping stuff. That is also common on this channel, as you will see. But yeah, so after I finished the first half of the book, which I pretty much enjoyed, I DNF'd the second half, unfortunately. Sorry. This is gonna be an unedited video, but I'm already regretting that decision. Anyways, I buddy read this as well with Victoria, and I think she really still enjoyed it, because I think she still rated it 4 stars. So it's definitely not a bad book. It was just too long, and for me, I was really having trouble getting excited about it. Even though there were parts of it where I was like, I love this. It was just really stretching on a long time. So I DNF'd it because that's what I do now, apparently. And I finished the Apothecary Diaries, Volume 8. This is one of my favorite mangas. It's literally... Okay, the art is a huge reason why I love it. I'm going to show you. The cover of this one in particular is really, really gorgeous. It's about a Chinese apothecary owner who really loves learning about poisons in particular, and she ends up becoming a bit of a detective in an imperial harem in China. And so you're following her adventures as a detective in this imperial harem. And you learn about her past very slowly. Like I said, this is volume 8. So I'll probably read volume 9 in February because I've just been hanging on to it and I really want to. I try to pace myself with them because they're so fun. They're just like a really delicious little interlude in between heavier stuff. But I usually read them like right before bed, and I'm usually reading lighter stuff right before bed. So, but it's just like, it's perfect, especially if I don't have great focus. I can just read a manga. And then I watched The Death of Stalin, which Tony, who is a subscriber here, thank you for recommending that movie to me, Tony, because it was so great. I really loved The Death of Stalin. So this is a kind of black humor about the day Stalin died and how all of the power-hungry people all around him were treating his death and how people gained power. And I think it's really funny if you're familiar with Russian history around the Soviet Union, especially at this time, because all of the men who are involved in this, it's all of their reactions to Stalin's death. And I have a feeling there's just a lot of character humor going on that I don't really know all those people. So that part went over my head quite a bit. But I think if you appreciate the history of this moment, the death of Stalin, you will enjoy this so much. But I also enjoyed it. And Soviet history is something I know a lot less of than, Dostoevsky's time. So I definitely want to learn more about it, but I loved it. It was so great. And then I finished The Meg by Steve Alten, which is about a megalodon shark, which is like a prehistoric shark rising out of the depths of the ocean and ravaging humanity. And the cover really says it all. And this is why I picked it up, was because of this cover. Basically, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to read this. So this came out quite a few years ago now. I feel like, it's like, I read this for the Cryptid Readathon, and I also wrapped this up in my favorites of 2023 video, because it was one of my favorites of 2023. I just had so much fun reading this. I read it all on ebook. I didn't realize there was an audiobook for some reason. So I read the whole thing on ebook, no problem focusing on it. It was just a blast, so easy to read. I was just so drawn along. So it's a thriller, as you could probably tell. And it's kind of sci-fi, because as far as we know, there are no megalodon sharks. But it's following a man who has staked everything on the fact that he was in a submersible in the Mariana Trench, deeper than any human has like ever gone in the Mariana Trench, and his submersible was attacked by something, and he does a deep dive on all this research to figure out what attacked his sub, and he is convinced that it was a megalodon. And when he goes public with this, he gets left out of the water, and he also gets pretty much destroyed professionally, because not that he wants to go back down there, but because people died when the megalodon attacked the craft, and nobody believes that it was a megalodon attacking the craft. They believe that he killed everybody by acting rashly. So yeah, it's really like good. There's great character investment. It's like really tense. It's terrifying. It really makes you feel like the claustrophobia that you would feel in a submersible that far under the ocean. So this was fantastic. And then we watched the movie, which was fine. It's a Jason Statham movie, and I enjoyed it. I watched the whole thing, and I don't watch that many movies, sadly. I kind of wish that I did. Especially, Jenny was so into TV and movies. It really makes me want to, like, I should. Being with Jenny really made me want to better myself, put myself out there and try new things more, because she was so good at jumping into new things and trying new things. And she watched like tons of new shows and movies, and she was so familiar with all these different fandoms, and I'm just like, why don't I do that? I should do that too. So anyways, I was glad that I watched it, even though it was probably like a 3-star movie. I liked the book a lot more. There's just more detail in the book. So anyways, so I watched the movie of that, and then Dracula. I finished Dracula, and it was a full cast audio. And this was another, I wrapped this one up as well in my 2023 favorites. I definitely need to read this physically, because I listened to most of it. In fact, I might have listened to all of it, but I got a copy from the library because I really want to read it physically. And I am aware that this is not everybody's favorite vampire novel. Like, Jenny loved vampire stories, and she didn't like this. And I don't think Victoria liked it either. So I realized that it is not a favorite for a lot of people. However, it is now a favorite of mine. It was so, so good. I thought we definitely spent plenty of time with vampires, but I don't know. I don't know what the proportions of the book were that we were spending with vampires, because I was listening to it. And it felt like pretty long, but I was really happy with the length anyways, because I didn't want it to end. I think I listened to it on like 1x speed the whole time through. Like, that's how I listen to audiobooks now usually. I don't usually speed through them unless I have a deadline that I have to get through. So this was fabulous. All about Count Dracula, who is discovered to be a vampire by a very smart vampire hunter and a group of friends who've been terrorized by this vampire. And yeah, basically they're hunting him down, and there are female vampires. So it was wonderful. It was wonderful on audio. If you've never read it, you could definitely enjoy it on audio. So thank you, Victober, for getting me to finally read this classic. I can't believe it took me that long. It's definitely worth it. Okay, I DNF'd also. I DNF'd so much in December. I probably need to DNF some things now, but I really hate giving up on things. You know, I just hate doing that. But because it's probably me. It's probably not the books. It's probably just like, this book is not for me. But another one is the autobiography of Santa Claus by Jeff Gwynne, I think it is. Yes, Gwynne. I mean, this was for Victoria's Patreon, and nobody enjoyed this, which is a surprise because the reviews are pretty good. Like, Dia was the one who suggested this in Victoria's. It's like a Patreon. The patrons suggest the book genre, and then everybody throws out. So, and then a wheel gets spun to decide which genre we're going to read. And then, oh, by the way, sorry about this like slash of bloody red on my finger, on my hand. I didn't even realize I did that. So sorry, I'll try to hide that if that's bothering you. When I was cutting my bangs tonight, I just like stabbed myself. Very smooth, I know. Anyways, yeah. What was I saying? We all didn't like it. I didn't read very far. I probably read like 10% into it. And the beginning wasn't bad, but it was just like, this is really cozy and I'm not in the mood for cozy. Which doesn't really make sense because I finished some other cozy books, but I guess this just wasn't my brand of cozy. And then He That Should Come. I'm not going to try to find a picture of this one because it's an old play and I don't think it was ever published separately, like physically, because it was actually something people performed. So it's like a script. But anyways, He That Should Come by Dorothy L. Sayers is part of the Four Sacred Plays collection, which is on Amazon for 99 cents. And this is my favorite of the plays. And it's all about the birth of Christ I think this one was also wrapped up in my 2023 favorites. Wow, my December reading was apparently great. I had a lot of favorites in December. This is a play that I read before, and it seemed like everybody really enjoyed it, which made me really happy. And we have a live show here on my channel, which I probably need to edit because I accidentally like started the live show before everybody was ready. So I was like, sorry about that. Everybody's still like talking. And then they all realize they're live. It's kind of awkward. I needed to cut that out. But anyways, it was a good live show. That was a crazy live show, though. That was a crazy live show. I think it went well, though, still. I think we had some good discussion. Thanks to everybody who came. Not thanks to me. But anyways, grace. God's grace on us on that live show, for sure. So sweet, philosophical, the perfect nativity play. That's what I wrote, and I completely agree. Smart, too. It's just, Dorothy L. Sayers was so smart. She did not write the Christian fiction that feels focused on the family-y. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but Kev always says, oh, that feels kind of focused on the family. Focus on the Family is, it's like a Christian organization that puts out content that's very fluffy and happy, I guess I would say. And Sayers is kind of the opposite of that. She really takes life head on, in my opinion, and speaks wisely about it. I mean, she was in advertising, so she really worked in the world. She wasn't some intellectual way off in the clouds, even though she was an intellectual and she did know like 5 languages and translate Dante, and she totally was an intellectual, but she also worked in the real world. So I just feel like she has this really incredible balance to her writing, and I loved her. She was a critical thinker. That's what I love about her, and it really comes through in her writing. So philosophical and wonderful. And it fits so well in the period. I think it feels like it feels like, yes, this could be actually like I'm reading in the period. It feels like that. Even though not exactly, because it's still like, it feels very British the way it's like everybody's accents. Like she gives notes, like author's notes. And she's like, oh yeah, this guy could speak with this kind of accent and stuff like that. Like you can feel the British influence in it, but it still also feels like accurate to the period. It's such an interesting mix of that. Okay, Testament of Youth by Vera Brittain, which I think it's really good. Honestly, I really wish that I had time to read the whole thing physically, but unfortunately, because all that was available was like pictures of the book and not like an ebook that I can have my iPad read to me, or an audiobook where I can actually just listen to it, unless I got it on Audible for like, I don't remember how much money, but it was too much for me. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish it, so I did DNF it, and it does spend like a lot of time. So this is the memoir of a nurse during World War I, and she is talking about her experiences growing up, kind of what made her into the woman that she is and why she believes what she believes. And then eventually, I think she gets to World War I and how it affects her. She falls in love. Her lover and her brother both, I believe, have to go off to war. So it's very sad. You just kind of have a feeling that things are going to go well for her or her family. And she seems very jaded at times. So, and this was highly recommended to me for World War November. So it was our group pick for World War November. And I could see why. Like, I do want to read it, but it's hard unless I can buy the audiobook. So, fabulous, and also extremely, extremely long and not very accessible as far as ways of reading it. There's like one way to read it. So, yeah, next, The Wednesday Wars by Gary D. Schmidt. This was the last of the Kindred Spirits book club books that was available for free. And so I really was looking forward to this one all year because I've been wanting to read this. I have barely read any middle grade this year, but this was so good. This is set during the Vietnam War in America, and it's about a schoolboy and his family, and a wonderful teacher, and kind of mishaps that the main character faces. He falls in love with Shakespeare and has a war with like these evil rats in his classroom, and feels very underappreciated by his family, but starts making connections and growing up and becoming a young man. And I thought it was really amazing and great on audio, and I'm really grateful that Kate Howe hosted this for her book club because I loved it. It was so good. And then I finished so much in December. Holy cow. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This is my second time listening, I believe, all the way through. But I listen to it over and over again at night because then I'll just fall asleep. And then I'll go back and re-listen to what I listened to the night before and then fall asleep again. So it took me a while, like a really long time, to get through the second time. Because I just love being in the world and it's so cozy and comfortable to me. So it's definitely one of my favorite books, I would say. Super, super cozy. So, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is about the Napoleonic Wars in Britain, and it's told with this perfect amount of like humor and this prose that is just it's a treat to read. However, it is a bit too long for me to read physically, and I've heard other people say that as well. But I think if the audiobook is so fabulous, if you can just I don't know. If you can enjoy the audiobook to this, I think it's the way to go, honestly. It's so wonderful on audio. And that's how I tend to enjoy it. Now, Susanna Clarke, I think she's probably, I can safely say that she's one of my favorite fantasy authors of today, of the modern writers. And I hope that she writes more. I need to read her short stories because I loved this and I loved Piranesi. So I'm back to physically reading it now. I'm actually going to try to read the whole thing physically because I enjoy it so much. So we'll see if I'm able to do that, finish that anytime soon. I'm going very slowly, but I was sick in December and there just wasn't much that I could do because I was awake at night and just couldn't sleep. And so I just read this and it was so calming. So Flawless by Elise Hu was one that Dia recommended to me. I filmed the whole vlog reading like Dia, and it should have gone up by now, but again, January was rough and very busy, and I didn't expect to be hosting a second readathon for the death of one of my best friends. So yeah, it just didn't, I don't know if I'll be able to post. I had several things filmed already that I wanted to post, and most of them I just scrapped and was like, I'm not gonna post these. And I really hate to scrap this though, because it was really, Dia is great at picking out the taste of a booktuber. If you want to get great recommendations, ask Dia for some recommendations. Like, she was so on target with everything that she recommended to me. So let me pull up this book. This is about the K-beauty industry, and it's written by, I believe, an American Chinese woman, journalist, and it's so interesting hearing her thoughts because she, sorry, I don't know why it's, okay, nope, okay, I don't know if it's gonna let me show you the, I guess I'll just show you the small little picture. Yeah, that's the cover. And yeah, she basically takes you inside the industry and tries out some of like the injections that people get. She brings a lot of research to the page, and I have so many notes that I want to go through with you guys and finish off that vlog with all those notes. So maybe I'll try to do it just so I can get my thoughts out about Flawless. Yeah, I might do that because I want to go more in depth on Flawless. She does a lot of research. She is like treating it like she's a consumer. So it's not like she's involved in the industry, but she interviews and tries out parts of the industry. She talks about the timeline of how K-beauty developed compared to the Western world and why it developed, and along with other elements of the Korean society. So it was really interesting. I feel like she was pretty critical of the industry in some ways, even though she also really enjoys the industry herself. So that was a good balance. I feel like Elise Hu brought a good balance to it. She wasn't overly critical, but she definitely was like, there's some problems here. So yeah. Okay, next we'll talk about Kuma Bear, which, not the light novel, the manga, which I'm buddy reading with Tiffany, and it's by Kumanano. This is a cute manga series that was recommended to Tiffany by one of her subscribers about a girl who is a big fan of video games, gets sucked into a video game, and wears this bear suit, even though she thinks it looks really stupid, but it's like super powerful. And so she's like moving through the world in this first book and meeting some characters who I think are going to be important. And Tiffany loved this because she has discovered a love for gaming with her daughter. It's like a hobby that they can share and connect over. So she really loves gaming. And so she understood a lot of the terminology. And for me, I'm not really a gamer. There's been a couple games that I've really loved, like Breath of the Wild. I can't just say Zelda anymore because the second Breath of the Wild, it was too hard for me, so I didn't really like it. But Pokemon, there's been more. There's definitely like Kingdom Hearts. I'm trying to remember all the games that Kev and I have played through. We've played through several games and had a lot of fun with them, but it's been a while since I found a game that I was like obsessed with. But so I rated this like 3 stars. It was funny and cute. And yeah, I would say if you're a gamer, you would probably really enjoy this, especially if you like cute things. So, we are planning to read volume 2 starting tonight. Actually, I'm going to be starting it. So, next, I finished Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm trying to keep up my read as much nonfiction as fiction, but it's been hard because sometimes it's so much faster to read fiction, and also I need things to relax with. A lot of my reading is done in the evening. In fact, it's pretty rare that I'm reading during the morning or daytime anymore, because I'm trying to like focus on work and social stuff and such. So, yeah, now that I have a social life, I think I've always, I do not take social life for granted anymore. After going so long with my health condition, not really being able to reach out and be with friends and family, now I'm just like, okay, my happy place is being with people. And so I still really enjoy reading, but it will always take like second place to friendships. So a lot of times I'm reading books with friends, and those are also going to take priority over books that I'm just enjoying on my own. But I do want to continue trying to read nonfiction. And I have a couple of nonfiction buddy reads coming up, like with Faith from Faith and Books. We're going to be reading some stuff for We Love Jenny, which I'm really happy about. So, Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann is about the Osage. I was saying Osage, and now I know that that's wrong. But can you really know how to pronounce it from the romanization? Probably not. That's also something that I'm learning with languages. I mean, there's no way that you're going to be able to pronounce it correctly just looking at the romanization, because that's the problem. It's another language for a reason. There's different letters, there's different sounds that are not in English. So I don't really know how you say Osage. Maybe that's how people say it. But the Osage murders and the birth of the FBI. And I think this was more about the birth of the FBI than I really cared about. I was really more interested in solving those murders. I really wanted to hear solving the murders. So I felt like I really got lost in the weeds in this one listening on an audiobook, and it probably would have been better if I had read it physically, but I just didn't have time for that. However, the ending was crazy. The ending was absolutely bonkers, madness. It was really taking down this one element of Osage history that I had never even heard of, and that's that natives of the Osage were not allowed to like run their own estates and money. Basically, they were put in charge, like a white person was put in charge of their money, and it so happened that those white people went on to murder tons of the Osage for their money. And it was just like, what? Like, that was the reason behind so many of the deaths. And it was like, wow. It was crazy. The ending just blew my mind. I was like, how did I not know this about American history? It was crazy. So I'm really grateful to learn about that. I don't know why we ever thought that was a good idea in the first place, but I did not see it going that badly either. I did not expect that. So this was really sad, really, really sad. But I'm glad that I know about it now, and I do kind of I need to like go read a Britannica article or something and just learn more about these murders, because that's insane. So I'm sort of veering away from true crime, I feel like. For a while I was like, true crime, I'm gonna really enjoy some true crime on not, as like nonfiction, because it's really fast-paced nonfiction, and sometimes you can learn about the period. And it was interesting learning about this period, because it was like the West was transforming at this time into a nation of laws versus a nation of do what you want and take what you want, especially if you're white. And the lawmen at the time were basically in it. I mean, our lawmen are paid because it's a whole job. I mean, you have to make a living and also solve murder. I mean, it has to be like part of your living if you're going to be a really good detective. But the way it was done here was like very little regulation and kind of scary, like really scary. So it's amazing that some of these murders were even solved with the way the law was at this time. So yeah, I wish it had been a little bit less about the birth of the FBI though, because that wasn't very interesting to me at all. Okay, next, Nettle Bone by T. Kingfisher, which is a fantasy. This is one of the ones recommended by Dia, and it was a great recommend. Jenny and I talked about this as well, I think in our last live stream, and she enjoyed it as well. So this could be one that you could enjoy for We Love Jenny, by the way. This is adult fantasy. I think this was also in my 2023 favorites. So many of these were. Is a fantasy following a young woman who is a princess of a small nation, and she has two older sisters, and both of them get married to a prince, one after the other, because he kills the first one, and then the second one appears to be in danger of also dying. So this third daughter is the one that we're following. It's very fairy tale-esque, and she is the one who has to save both kingdoms from the despot in charge. And there's like a whole bunch of stuff about curses and witches and magic, and it's great. It's Jenny used the word cozy to describe this, and I would not have thought of using that. There's one character, like a fairy godmother in here, who I just felt like crying sometimes when she spoke. Like, she just was characterized so well. I think that she is what put this over the top and made this a favorite of the year for me, the characterization of the fairy godmother. So maybe it is cozy, and I like cozy fantasy. That's something I just posted a video talking about how Jenny knew my tastes better than I knew my tastes. And she was like, you like cozy fantasy, don't you? I was like, I do, don't I? Cozy fantasy, that's my brand. I like cozy. So yeah, I guess this is cozy. Yeah, I would say that it's inventive and interesting and cozy and also dark. There are elements of horror, and I think some of her other books also involve a lot of horror. So highly recommended. We finally finished the December wrap-up. Goodness, don't worry, the January one is not as long at all. Because a lot of the things that I read in January, I have not finished yet. So maybe I'll just... Midnight Sun is one of those things. I'm over halfway, but I was trying to read it physically without the use of an audiobook for most of our vacation. So that took up a lot of my reading time. But I'm on page 575 out of like 800. So I'm getting there, and I think the end, actually, after I finish Breaking Dawn, which I'm currently listening to, which is a crazy experience, listening to Breaking Dawn while reading Midnight Sun, I think I'm going to listen to the end of Midnight Sun, because most of it I really wanted to read, but the end, I feel like the plot of Twilight at the end is not my favorite, and I just listened to it, so Midnight Sun is Edward's perspective on the events of Twilight, which is all the events of Twilight in the original book are all from Bella's perspective. Edward Cullen, Bella Swan meet in Twilight. Edward Cullen is a vampire, and Bella falls in love with him, and little does she suspect that he also falls in love with her, but she is what's called a blood singer to him, where her blood calls out to him more strongly than anybody else's blood. that he has ever encountered. And so it's really a fight for him to not kill her, basically, and not just like drain the life from her. But he finds the strength to not kill her because he also falls in love with her. So it's like a really impeccably written love story, in my opinion, because love is self-sacrificial. There's no ego involved. It's really about both of you putting the other person's needs before your own. And that's the only way a marriage can really work. And I think that is what Twilight is modeling, even though it's kind of startling to see it with two 17-year-olds. It's a bit cosmic for two 17-year-olds who've just met within months to be like that cosmically in love. But nevertheless, the model is not entirely wrong. And they grow together throughout the series. Edward becomes less controlling because his anxiety, he learns to address his anxieties rather than just acting on his anxieties. And this is so interesting. I'll talk more about this in a future video, but it's really written with like, she clearly listened to her readers and reviewers, because she really wrote a letter and was like, this is the Edward of my imagination. You all got him wrong. That's really what. So, yeah, I'll talk more about this in the future, but this has been really smart, I think, and really enjoyable. So, yeah, I hesitate to not talk about it now because it's so fresh, but I'll talk about it later. Okay. Next, I feel bad I'm not going through my notes very much as I'm talking tonight, but that was what I really loved doing for vlogs, was like I could go a little bit more in depth. I had a lot more time to talk about a book, but it's okay. Okay, I meant to read a book for the Kindle Kobo Cleanout in January, but again, what a crazy month. Great month and month from hell. So yeah, the Kindle Kobo Cleanout, Crystal from Fiber Artsy, she's the one who I learned about it from, because I learned about most readathons from her because she's co-hosting most readathons. So definitely go check out Crystal's channel if you're ever interested in learning about the readathons that are happening on BookTube, because she is a co-host of all of them. I don't know how she does it, but every month she's co-hosting some really neat readathon. So Crystal from Febregency, thank you girl. Yeah, for this I was going to read The Surprising Adventures of Baron Munchausen, which has been on my Kindle for a very, very long time, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So yeah, hopefully I will get to do that soon. And I also Tree and Leaf that I'll talk. So for my February TBR, I'll just mention that here, since I was just talking about Midnight Sun. I'm gonna finish Midnight Sun, hopefully, and Breaking Dawn. I'm gonna continue on with The Way of Kings, which I just got from the library. So I've been reading it last night. I think I started it last night finally, and I'm loving being back in this world. And it's just such a beautiful book. It makes it fun to read when it's this beautiful. So, and I did not finish. I didn't even post my January TBR because I didn't get around to posting my December wrap up for now. But I've been reading Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I'm reading this with Faith from Faith in Books and Peg from the History Shelf, and we're gonna have a Zoom call, and I can't wait. I read some of this while on vacation, and I'm almost through the first part, which is the hardest part. The first part is really hard, and then the second part is like, it's like a breeze in comparison. But the first part is so good. It's like where all the philosophy of the story is, and it's hard to read, and it's been really draining. As soon as we got back home, I barely read this because I've been so busy trying to do like the social stuff for We Love Jenny and Febregency and keep up with my normal life. So I haven't gotten very far into it since we got home, so I need to work on that. But it is so good. I was really hoping to finish it by the end of January, so hopefully I can still do that, but I just have not had the focus for it. Dostoevsky I found he does require a lot of focus from me. I can't just whip out a Dostoevsky anytime I want and read it. Okay, so next, People of the Lie by M. Scott Peck. This is by a psychoanalyst who... Did I mention this as well in my favorites of 2023? No, I don't think so, because I finished it this month. So I'm actually waiting for a hard copy of this because I do believe that the audiobook is abridged. So let me just like pull it up here. So you could tell it's a super old book. So this is a psychoanalyst who was an atheist, or at least agnostic, actually. I'm not sure if he was atheist or agnostic, but he found enough instances of people who had mental illnesses that were unnamed. Basically, he was like, these people are evil, but we don't have another word for it, but there's something wrong with these people. So he said it's evil. So he discovered the presence of evil through his psychology practice. And he talks about what that looks like and how to change it about yourself. Basically, he says, like, for example, people in prison are not the evil ones, because he's like, I've very rarely actually met evil people in prison. A lot of them have mental illnesses and a lot of them have problems, but they will work with us to try and better themselves. So by his definition, that is not evil. His definition of evil is being blind to your faults that are hurting other people and not trying to enlighten yourself, not trying to make yourself better, closing your eyes, and just going on hurting people. He says that is evil. So it's like a blind willfulness and a refusal to face your own flaws. So those are evil people, as he describes them. And he uses like case examples to kind of illustrate this. So for example, there was a boy whose brother committed suicide, and then his parents gave their remaining son the gun for Christmas that their older son used to kill himself. And they didn't take him to see a psychologist when he was depressed, when he started acting out, like he stole a car. And finally, he ended up in this psychologist's practice because after he stole a car, the police were like, you need to send your son to therapy. And the boy improved with therapy, especially when the therapist got him out of his home and made him, he pretty much forced the parents to make the child live with an aunt that he liked. Because he was like, you are not helping him. Like, they refused to see that giving him their other son's gun was like not just a mistake, but actually like an evil thing to do. And they were like, tried to like defend themselves. And he was like, there was not really a defense for that. And they just closed their eyes to it and refused to do anything. And finally he was like, I'm going to get a judge involved if you do not let me hand your son over to his aunt, basically. And so they did it. They didn't want to get involved with a judge. But he's like, that is evil. That is an example of the parents being evil to this child. Because he's like, the child improved. He just needed a home life where the parents actually cared about him, and he didn't have that. So, it's a bit out of date, though, because it refers to some mental illnesses. It refers to mental illnesses as like a moral failing. And, you know, as somebody who struggles with anxiety, I feel like that's a bit tone deaf, you know, in today's point of view. But at the time he was writing, I'm sure it was considered a moral failing. And yeah, that's fine. So I really enjoyed this. This was great. So I'm waiting for the physical copy, because I definitely want to read it physically. So, De Montfort by Joanna Bailey. That is the next book here. And I actually did have this one too. This is a play. It's not really coming up. There must not be a good picture of it. This is a tragic play. It's like a Regency play. And I was looking at plays to read on my channel, like a live reading for Febregency, and I just ditched that idea after we heard about Jenny, because it was like, I can't perform on my channel. I can't do that. But this is a play that I was reading as a potential for that. And the writing is really beautiful. It's like a very melodramatic tragedy, and I think I would have probably enjoyed it if I tried to finish it, but I just wasn't sucked in enough to want to finish it after realizing, okay, I'm not going to be performing this. So yeah, I was considering it, but just DNF'd it. It wasn't like it's about this man de Montfort who really hates another man. I think he lost a duel to him, and so he's ashamed. And then he ends up killing this other man, and it's like about why he did that. And I don't know. I think it was like the most famous, I think, play of Joanna Baillie's career, but probably not her like best work, would be my guess. So I wanted to try her out, but maybe I'll try a different play by her sometime. And I'm probably mispronouncing her name, by the way. Bailey? I don't know. Joanna Baillie. So next, The Sparrow. Oh my gosh, guys. The Sparrow was so good. So this is a book that I read with Chelsea from Voyage of a Time Wanderer. And it was worth every page, even though it was like definitely over 500 pages. Like, I don't know how many pages there were, but I was reading the ebook and I was just like, how long is this? But it really, it didn't fly by, but I was so invested. This is another one that, actually, this is probably the other reason why I didn't finish that much in January. Because I was reading this gigantic book in Midnight Sun. And this is the 20th anniversary edition, which I didn't realize when I started reading it, because it feels like it was written now. It's incredible. I think it was written in like 93 or 94, and it feels like how did you not know? How were you not writing this now? Like, she talks about iPads in here, but she calls them tablets. She's like, people have these tablets and stuff. It was like, whoa. So basically this is about a Jesuit mission to a planet where I don't want to share too much, but it's about a Jesuit mission to an alien planet. And it will absolutely tear your heart out and stomp on it, and you'll be begging for more anyways. It's so good. The writing is beautiful. It's really funny. It's very adult. It's like not for teens or kids, definitely for adults. But the conversations are so theological. It's kind of like Catholic sci-fi. And the author herself, she grew up Catholic, left the faith, became happily atheist or agnostic. And then when she became a parent, she realized, no, I need to learn more about God. She started believing in God again after she had children. Because she realized, oh yeah, all the things that I want my children to learn, that I want to teach my children, they come from religion. So it would be totally hypocritical for me to be like, you need to, follow all these rules that were invented by religion, without actually following any sort of religion. So I think she's kind of a universalist, probably. Very, what's the word for that? It starts with an E. It's not Episcopal, it's... I can't remember. But regardless, yeah, she's actually Jewish now. So, but there are Jewish characters, there's Jesuit characters, there's atheists, and everything in between. And they have the best conversations, and it's lovely. It's a really wonderful book. I would highly recommend it, regardless of where you are on the faith spectrum. It was so thoughtful, and I think you will laugh and cry your way through it. Absolutely one of my favorites of 2024. Okay, next, I Ask in the Name of God by Pope Francis. And this was fascinating to me after reading The Sparrow, because Pope Francis is a Jesuit. So I think this was I had already been thinking of reading this. Like, as soon as I heard about it, I really was thinking like, I bet Jenny would love this, because she was a fan of Pope Francis. She really liked him, and she's also a big fan of prayer. She did a lot of praying to alleviate her own anxiety. She said, prayer, I just have to pray for my anxiety to disappear, which I think is so cool. So I really thought she would have loved this. So that's kind of what I read in January to remember Jenny by. Not that she actually talked about this book. She didn't. I didn't really have the chance to ask her about it. Actually, she might have. I don't know. But I didn't have the chance to ask her about it. So it was a bit fluffy, but the whole Pope Francis's whole point, I'm trying to, I ask in the name of God, Pope Francis. It's not coming up on Amazon. And then in the name of God is mercy. Like everything else is coming up. I don't know why I ask in the name of God is not coming up, but it's a very recent book that just came out, and it's 10 prayers addressing the 10 most pressing issues of the world today, including like climate change and the need for politicians to stop being divisive and not be spewing hate speech. And he calls for like an end of the culture of abuse in the church. And he talks about a lot of things that I thought maybe if I read it physically, maybe there was some like research put into sort of some of his suggestions and claims, but to me it felt like super fluffy, and I don't know if it was really worth listening to, but there were a couple things that really stood out to me. I really liked some of his sentiments really gave me food for thought. Like he talks about how in like some countries the pandemic is only ending like very recently because they didn't have access to the COVID-19 vaccination. So he calls for a sharing of healthcare to all of those who don't have it. And because his perspective is super international, like I said, he's a Jesuit pope from South America, Argentina? I can't remember exactly where, but he's from, he's not like from America or Italy. I don't think that's where he grew up. I think he had a rougher upbringing. So, but his perspective is super international, and really he is trying to talk to people outside of the Catholic Church. Like the focus of this book is very international. He's talking to all people who are interested in like humanity and being humanitarians. People who are good and concerned for the welfare of other people. That's really who he's writing this book to. It's not just to like the Catholic faithful. So I loved that about this. And yeah, he's talking about nations that are more poor than you can even imagine if you haven't really been outside of the US very much. And we tend to like try to take care of our own and not even realize all that we have here in America. So I just really think that was a really interesting thought, that we need to be making sure the whole world has access to healthcare. And it's not just about like, oh, everybody in like one country. It's like, no, everybody everywhere. I feel like I learned a lot about Jesuits between this book and reading articles about Pope Francis, and also reading The Sparrow. I was like, wow, okay, I learned a lot about the Jesuits through this. I need to learn more about denominations. I'm really badly uninformed about different denominations of the faith. So, yeah, okay. Night of the Living Dummy 2 by R.L. Stine. This was fun. Kev and I are still enjoying we're actually enjoying our last R.L. Stine book that's available on audiobook that he wanted to listen to. So, and that's The Haunted Mask. So I'm sure we'll finish that. So this was good, but I think I preferred the first one, Night of the Living Dummy 1, not 2. But this one was good too. It was just enjoyable, 3-star fun read. So, and then I finished The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I'm not sure where she's even from. But, and I don't want to spoil anything about the plot, but maybe I'll just give you a little synopsis without like an ending. So we are following a very unhappy noble lady who has recently been married to Lord Percy is his name, and she just thinks he's pretty dumb, but she's kind of fallen for him. She's absolutely the smartest person in the room, in any room, but she's kind of fallen in love with him, and she married him because she thought he absolutely loves me head over heels, and that's what she wanted. She wanted somebody who would really love her and forgive her faults. And as soon as he finds out something that she did in her past, she was from France. It's written during the time of the Reign of Terror. It's set during the time of the Reign of Terror, rather. And something that she says at one point gets a family killed in the Reign of Terror. And her husband, as soon as he finds that out, apparently can't forgive her. And so it starts off with this really, like, she's very upset that she can't connect with her husband. And kind of as we're learning about all this, we're also learning about this man named the Scarlet Pimpernel, who has been saving noble families in France and bringing them to England. And the authorities are trying to track him down. And it reminds me a bit of Les Mis, really. There's this really intense investigator who's trying to track down this Scarlet Pimpernel. But I feel like this isn't written with the same level of, like, ethical moral exploration as Les Mis, but it was a fun adventure classic, and I think it was like the perfect length, and it was so fun. I read this for the Bookish Kingdom book club, and thank you, Emma, for getting me to finally read this. This, I know, is one of Ryan and Kristen Cardinale, who ran the Seeking Stories channel and Stacking Stories channel, and I think there's another channel that they do now too, but it was one of their favorites and they recommended it to me. And so I'm really glad that they did, and I definitely want to watch the movies. So anyways, so fun. It moves really quickly. Yeah. And you can see the influence of this story on, like, other modern stories as well, which has been fun. And then Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I buddy read this with Tiffany, which was really fun because she was reading for her Patreon, and she did a reading vlog for her patrons about reading this book, and it was so fun hearing all of her thoughts on it. And just last night we were just talking about it after her Patreon meeting for the Fellowship of the Ring. We were just, like, voxing back and forth as I was finishing up my dinner. So loved reading this with you, Tiffany. Thank you for reading it with me. It's a perfect book. It's super short. It's a great way to get introduced to Susanna Clarke. Her writing is just perfect. And it was really a testament to the skill of her writing, because both Tiffany and I had totally different ideas of what was happening in the book, and we were both confused, but we were both loving it, even though we were totally confused. And like I said, we were on totally different tracks. So it was really funny to hear her first thoughts reading it and comparing them to my original thoughts reading it, like what we both were suspecting was happening. We're just totally, totally different. So yeah, I think we both really enjoyed it, and it really made me want to look into Plato. Is it Plato's forms or Aristotle's forms? What is it called? Plato's forms, yeah. And it made me want to look into that, because there's this whole section about how the statues in this house, it's really set in a house where there's an ocean in the house. And that contrast to me is like, it's like a classical, beautiful house with these classic statues and stuff like that. And the setting is just one of my favorites ever in a fantasy book, I think. And it talks about how, these statues, they are representations of real life. And it was just so beautiful, and made me definitely want to look into Platonic forms. So I don't want to tell you really what's going on in the book at all, because you just have to know it's beautiful, it's very mysterious, and you're going to be guessing until about halfway through the book, and then you'll start putting the pieces together. But it's so short that you won't feel like it's dragging on with no answers, and it's totally worth just going along for the ride. So highly recommend. Definitely going to be a favorite of 2024, because it was a wonderful reread. So there we go, I did it! I can't believe I finished everything. Today I'm going to be bringing to you my Febregency TBR, my dedicated Febregency TBR. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So first of all, because we are doing this in honor of Jenny, I'm going to be reading, finally, I'm just dusting it off because I haven't pulled it out since our first Febregency. The works of Lord Byron. I have this gigantic, wonderful book of the classics. Oh my gosh, the words are so small. I don't know what I'll read in here. Maybe Harold's Pilgrimage. but I've never been one for epic poetry, so we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look through this. What do you guys think? What did Jenny love of Lord Byron? Did you ever hear her talk about specifically what she loved? I'm gonna have to go watch her videos about it. Oh darn. Yeah, I need to read some Lord Byron, but I just remembered that I have this, and that's why I'm adding it onto this already gigantic list. So the other things that I have written down here are Belinda by Mariah Edgeworth, which is our group pick. So we're excited to check that one out. And also Horatio Hornblower will be for the nonfiction, or for the historical fiction prompt of the readathon. So this is a book that this series I've heard Faith from Faith and Books talk about quite a lot on her channel. And so she really intrigued me about it and I want to read them. And then Emma mentioned, oh yeah, I want to read this for the nonfiction prompt. And I was like, and it's perfect because it's about a sea journey too. So that might even cover one of the other prompts. There's a prompt about a book set on the sea or during a sea journey or something. So, Beat to Quarters by C.S. Forester. I think that's the first one. And then next, another historical fiction that Chelsea mentioned in my comment section. She mentioned that she might read Marianne by Daphne du Maurier, and it looks like my library has a copy, so I might check that one out too. I'm really glad Chelsea's joining us, I guess, because Voyage of a Time Wanderer, she loves historical fiction. So now that we're including historical fiction in the Febregency list of things that you can read, she's joining us. I'm excited. And the next thing is Waverley by Sir Walter Scott, which I have on my ebook already. And I read Ivanhoe on Jenny's recommendation a couple years ago. And I loved it. It was so good. So I'm really excited to check out Waverley. And I think Tiffany might be reading it this Febregency. I'm really excited. I could be wrong about that. Did she already read it? Maybe she read it last year. I don't know. Anyways, King Lear, which is one of Jenny's favorites. She talked about it in a video about books that defined her decade as one of the books that defined one of the years of the decade that she was talking about. And that was quite a long time ago. That was one of her much earlier videos. So I have never read King Lear, and I was planning on reading Julius Caesar, which I'm sure she also loved. But I think, is King Lear about King Richard III? I can't remember. Anyways, it's a big, important book, and I feel like it's the one that launched her into history as a subject because she was studying something else. So she decided to study history because of King Lear. I could be slightly off about that, but it was a pivotal book for her. So it's definitely one that I want to read, and I like the tragedies. I'm a fan of dramatic tragedies. I know a lot of people are like, no, the comedies. Or is this considered a history? Or is it both history and tragedy? Anyways, next, The Cenci by Percy Shelley. This is another one that Jenny talked about quite a lot, and it is a play about a crime that happened. It's like true crime. So yeah, that's all I know about it. I just remember her talking about it and being like, I want to read that. And I just didn't get to it last year. So, oh, I forgot to write down a Regency pastime. I was supposed to write down Regency pastime. That is Tristan's prompt. So I still need to look up Regency pastimes. I don't think I'll be able to host a Regency game night, so I need to figure out maybe drawing. I draw all the time. That's probably a Regency pastime. Maybe I'll draw. I've been drawing K-pop figures. It's really fun while I listen to an audiobook. What else? Okay. Sense and Sensibility I have written down. I could use this in July. I could read this in July for Jane Austen July though. But so I probably won't probably read it right now, but I feel it feels wrong to not read Jane Austen. I wanted to, but I could save it for July because I already have quite a list. So, and then Vampirismus by E.T.A. Hoffman, which is a fantasy gothic horror story that it's about vampires. So that seemed very Jenny-ish as well. Definitely have to read the vampire story. And I'm getting a collection of his stories for my library. So hopefully that'll come in before too long and I'll be able to read that. But sometimes that can take a while for books to come in from the library. So Okay, and next, The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, which would be another one for the historical fiction prompt. This is our group read for We Love Jenny readathon, and it's about the romantic poets, and it's perfect. It's just perfect for this, I think. So I'm excited to read that. She was just such a fan of that whole group of people, like all of them. She loved them all. So I'm excited to read that. And then we have Remarkable Creatures by Tracy Chevalier about Mary Anning, who was a pioneer of paleontology. I really would like to learn about her. Right? That's another historical fiction one. I didn't write down everything that I was thinking. I must have gotten interrupted while I was writing this down because that's all I wrote about it. I had a couple other things written down here, but I haven't looked at them. It's just things I've been looking at throughout the whole year that I was like, oh, I should look at this for Febregency, like The Spanish Bride by Georgette Hare, because I love the 5books.com. Have you guys ever read articles there? But I love hearing what 5 books this expert would recommend on a subject. And they recommended War and Peace, which I thought was interesting. I was like, oh, I could read War and Peace for my historical fiction book, but because of the Napoleonic Wars. So, but yeah, anyways, that's it for my TBR. So hope you guys let me know down below what you're gonna be reading for Febregency. Tell me what I should prioritize, because there's so many. And please tell me your favorites from December/January. What's up next for you in February? That's it for now. Thank you guys for watching this gigantic video. I guess this might just be the length of my wrap-ups now, since I'm not talking to you guys as much during the month. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.